up, everybody? Here we are with another ENCORE Education video series, or video, I guess. As I think many of you know, here at Ellerbrock-Norris, we are tremendously passionate about safety as one of the risks we help our clients navigate through and manage. So we're going to focus on a specific conversation within the safety space today. As a reminder, we've got Elliot, Bassett, the Chief Operating Officer of Ellerbrock-Norris, on the call. We've also got me, Andy Bassett, President of Ellerbrock-Norris, and excited to be here with Kristin, who I'll introduce in a minute. But going back to what I said, safety as a topic of risk. And today's specific topic we're going to dive into pretty deep is around a strategy or solution within safety management, and that is job rotation. And it's an important way to help our key, as we always talk about, our most key resource, our people, to remain and maintain a safe work environment. And so today we've got Kristin Hodge from HINCO on the call. She is a local safety consultant, and her focus is related to orthopedic injuries. So Kristin, if you just want to maybe give the audience a quick background or bio on you and your company, go ahead.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I own a company called HINCO, HINCO. It's Hodge Injury Consulting, and my background is in sports medicine. And so now what I do is help like manufacturing companies, construction, warehouse, all sectors with their sprain, strains type injuries. So under the safety umbrella, my company is very niche, but it's to help with those overuse injuries or acute injuries, help companies get their injury numbers down, keep the workforce working safe, working full time.
Well, I can tell you that is a conversation we're having on a regular basis with people. So this is going to be good. It's going to be exciting. I'm excited to dive into it. So at that, as we mentioned, job rotation is going to be the topic today. It's an interesting topic for sure. And as I mentioned in the beginning, that is certainly a high level of expertise area for Kristin. So we're going to Elliot, unless you have anything else you want to say in the intro here, I guess Kristin, we'll let you dive in. So go ahead and share the idea around job rotation for us, if you would.
Yeah, and I'm glad you asked me here to do this because the answer is more complicated than it would seem. So first, we need to establish the goals a company is trying to achieve when they implement job rotation. So these generally fall into two categories. On the health side, for healthcare reasons, when we rotate people off of high-risk jobs, move them onto low-risk jobs, in theory, we're reducing risk exposure, preventing overuse injury, so then this would lower injury rates, lower healthcare costs. On the other hand, we'll have what we'll call HR reasons, which there are several, but just a few of them. One, by nature, to get a job rotation schedule, you're doing more job training, creating more job assignment flexibility. If someone calls in sick one day, you can easily place someone into that job who's already trained to do it. You overall are improving your productivity and quality with more cross-training. So with varying jobs, you're also hopefully reducing boredom. People aren't doing the same job all day, every day. And usually when employees have less boredom, they have overall higher job satisfaction. So as an employer, you're going to see less absenteeism and turnover and all the costs associated with that. So then the question is, do job rotation programs achieve these goals? And unfortunately, guys, there's mounting evidence and systematic reviews out there of job rotation strategies showing us that these programs are typically ineffective in reducing injury risk, and in some cases might even be increasing injury risk.
Oh, wow.
So how can that be? We're told so often we should be doing job rotation. How can it be bad? Well, there's two major pitfalls before the rotation is even in place when you're in the implementation phase. So one, we know job rotation is an administrative control. Within that hierarchy of controls, admin should never be a substitute for engineering. Administrative controls are temporary or used in tandem with engineering. It should never be a standalone solution. However, all too often it is. We substitute it in for often costly engineering controls because it's significantly cheaper. So if it's the only strategy you're using, you're setting yourself up for negative results there. And then the second pitfall is, who is assigning the rotations? Is it being done randomly by an individual not trained in ergonomics or biomechanics? Perhaps a floor supervisor just kind of randomly moving people around. Proper analyses of injury risk need to be done by someone trained to do so, someone who can identify high, medium, low risk jobs and effectively move people around within those jobs. So if you're using it as a standalone solution and someone inexperienced is doing it, you're off to a bad start. Now, pitfalls once it's in place, and I'm going to switch over and show you guys a diagram if I can share my screen, hopefully.
Yeah, and while you're doing that, Kristin, just as a kind of a follow-up question to that or elaboration, so kind of what you're getting at from that, having an experienced person that is assigning those job duties, the idea there being is that, we don't have somebody that is used to, say standing on a manufacturing line every day, all of a sudden going to a job where they're required to be lifting heavy, boxes or whatever from the floor to something over their head or whatnot, because again, the ergonomics are much different. They're probably not used to it. And we probably aren't doing the pre-shift stretching and all of that stuff that you're going to talk about a lot. But is that kind of just to elaborate on that a little bit, or maybe just get your thoughts kind of around that specifically?
Right. So oftentimes when we do a rotation, it's just kind of done randomly, or we guess what the risk is. We look at a job and think, well, that looks like it's tough on the shoulders. This job looks like it doesn't. Let's swap those employees. Well, if you're not actually trained in ergonomics or biomechanics, you're just kind of guessing. So if you can see my screen here, a sample production floor. So in this case, all the jobs have been properly categorized by low risk in green, high risk in red. In the real world, there would be medium risk jobs too, but for simplicity's sake of this visual, we'll keep it at green and red. So a common way someone might do a job rotation would be to divide the floor into groups of 4, each person doing one job for 2 hours during an 8-hour workday. So here you might think, okay, each person is only exposed to the high risk job for 2 hours a day, then doing easier work for 6 hours. Therefore, we've reduced their injury risk. The problem with that, as the literature is showing us, by spreading the risk around to more people, even for just 2 hours a day, you are increasing exposure. Everyone is now exposed to the high risk rather than keeping it contained to a smaller group, increasing your overall potential of injury. So a different way to set this production floor up might be to do something like this, where only 6 people would be exposed to the high risk and everyone else remains on low risk work, keeping their potential for injury low. And then we can focus on the high risk workers and do other strategies.
Yeah, and is part of that with the high risk too, that they can get used to the job, and better understand that high risk position so that they decrease, the likelihood of injury in those positions?
They can get used to it, but you can also do other strategies to help them. So instead of everybody being exposed to that risk, you only have a small pool of workers that are.
Yeah.
Okay? Then you can get into the other strategies. The research shows no evidence that high exposures on one task are offset by low exposures on another task. All you're doing is spreading it out more. So that's the problem that they're outlining in these studies. And
that makes sense.
Guys, from a job satisfaction standpoint, you now have an additional 6 workers unhappy because they're doing unnecessarily high risk work. And so then you're possibly increasing absenteeism and turnover, which you were trying to prevent when implementing this.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that does. And my first question was going to be I think you clarified it right there around that. So another question I have, I guess, would be, we did one of these similar thing to this with a good partner of ours, Doug Fletcher, whose background is in OSHA. Kristin, I know you know Doug. So how does OSHA view job rotation, or what's their stance on it?
Okay, so I have it right in front of me, right from their website. Their position is job rotation should be used with caution and as a preventative measure, not as a response to symptoms. If rotation is utilized, the job analyses must be reviewed by a qualified person to ensure the same muscle tendon groups are not used. A qualified person is one who has thorough training and experience sufficient to identify ergonomic hazards. So what they're saying is it should not be implemented randomly or haphazardly by an untrained person. It should not be a replacement for engineering controls or as a reaction to high injury rates, but rather as preventative. And guys, not to mention the nuance of setting it up. What if one employee has a vision disability and can't work a certain workstation? Or someone is post-op from a shoulder surgery, has restrictions, can't do certain movements? Are you equipped to properly evaluate those scenarios and assign them safely? Because if not, then again, you're increasing your injury potential.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's interesting. So we've taken probably a pretty common strategy people are using in job rotation. We've shed a different light maybe on it. What if not job rotation necessarily, then what would you suggest are other ways or some of the best ways we should consider around risk mitigation when it comes to injuries in the workplace?
Yeah, so to be clear, I'm not saying job rotation is bad. It can be very beneficial when done correctly. It's just that that's often not the case. So a few suggestions to get your clients on track if they're going to do this. First, in the pre-implementation side, engineering controls, permanent solutions. Job rotation is only ever intended to be temporary or in combination with engineering controls. Engineering controls can take time to do, or you may need to wait for a new fiscal year to budget it. Job rotation can be used in the interim and then in tandem once those controls are in place. And when you do it, make sure each job is properly analyzed, low, medium, high risk categories. A qualified professional in ergonomics and biomechanics can take that information, come up with an effective rotation. It cannot just be done randomly or by guessing the risk of each job. Now, once we're aware of the risk, we know there are high risk jobs on the floor, someone has to do them. We're working on engineering it out. We need to make sure the workforce is as safe as they can be for those jobs. Pre-placement screening for high risk jobs, make sure the employee is physically qualified. We might need to work in more frequent breaks throughout the day for muscle recovery. Custom pre-shift stretching programs. You mentioned those pre-shift programs earlier. Custom ones for the high-risk workers to prep their body for work. I'm a big advocate for custom programs. Not everyone on the floor needs to be doing the same warm-up. Someone in a high-risk job might need a longer, more intensive program. But custom programs are a conversation for another time, so that's another thing. But I would say those are some key points to get someone started with this if they're looking to implement or revamp their job rotation. So I know we're trying to keep this brief. I hope that answered all your questions.
That's perfect. And I had a follow up to that. Okay. Sorry, Andy. Because I think that this is super important, obviously, as well. You talked about it from the title HR side as well. But we talk to clients all the time about when you really dig into your job positions, the safety around it. A lot of times, you refer to it as HR absenteeism, turnover, all of those things. But there's also a big cost associated with that to the employer. And even from the standpoint of we've had clients of ours that have, based on safety recommendations, have changed around the way that their work flows or gotten equipment in that can lift those heavy boxes or wrap things, stuff like that, that was designed to decrease the risk of injury. But at the end of the day, it increased their productivity because now people are doing things that they should be doing and machines are doing the other things, heavy lifting, all of those things. And so I just wanted to maybe spin that a little bit differently, that there can be a lot of times a cost saving measure to the employer of this as well. In the same things you talked about, absenteeism, turnover, employee injury, all of those things. So I think that is something that shouldn't go unnoticed. And yeah, any thoughts around that?
No, absolutely. When you think about the direct costs of the cost you're saving on these, and then the indirect cost, which often exceeds that you have to kind of think a little further down the road on, it is oftentimes a huge cost saving measure. And the safety and the HR are intertwined a lot more than people think. That when there's higher job satisfaction and lower injury rates and lower absenteeism, it all kind of intertwines. And if any safety person thinks that turnover is an HR problem and don't think that they have a big role in that too, then they're mistaken.
Absolutely. It's a great point.
That's exactly right. Well, this is super, well, like we said, we're really passionate about it. And I think we did discover maybe we can make a series out of this. There might be a couple other topics that just came up that we could do this again. So, when we talk about safety, we talk all the time. It's kind of three phases. We've got pre-employment, which was touched on. What are we doing in the pre-employment phase of bringing people on board and training and pre-screening, et cetera. Then it's that ongoing communication within the culture of your company and the safety. And then it's, of course, how do we post-injury manage, because we're going to have all three phases. And so I think when we talk about things like job rotation and getting clarity around them, it's tremendously helpful to understand that cycle and bring safety as a core piece of our culture of our companies. And so, Kristin, you and your team, of course, are going to be instrumental in helping companies do that. So I certainly hope people listening to this or watching this are able to reach out to Kristin for advice and potentially utilize her services. What's your website for people to know, Kristin?
HINCOsolutions.com.
All right, so go to HINCOsolutions.com and there's a lot of information there, and hopefully Kristin can be an asset to your company. We thank you for your time, and again, we hope that everybody that watched this enjoyed. And like I said, we might have part 2 of the series here come out on another topic, because I thought this was very good and very educational.
Okay.
Absolutely.
You guys.
Thanks, Kristin.
See you, everybody.